To me, LIR has rejuvenated me.
It gave me an appreciation of how people can get together.
It's an organization of people who are interesting, good people.
It gave me the opportunity to see other facets of life that other people did to make our community the community that it is.
We've learned that you have to keep learning all your life.
In my thinking on retirement, one of the things that I often thought would be nice to do would be to go back to college or to learn just other things, because in my college, which took only about 2.5 years, I rushed through after I got out of the military. I never had a chance to take some of what I'll call the extra nice courses, art and history and a lot of things that go by you and you don't have to take. And I thought this would be a good opportunity to do something like that in retirement. Well, lo and behold, boom, I retired, I think it was in June or July. And this comes out in the paper. And I thought, well, that sounds interesting. I will go to a meeting. And I go to the meeting and I thought, well, yeah, okay, look, I got nothing to do and let's sign up and I'll volunteer for whatever they may need. Well, the next thing I knew, I got a call somewhere along the line, would you like to be president?
We had for a number of years hosted elder hostel programs. And as you probably know, elder hostel is a format where senior citizens, retired people, stay on a university campus and take some courses, and they usually stay for about a week. So that had been a very successful program, and as I saw how well it was received and how enthusiastic the learners were, I thought, well, maybe we could do something here on campus for the retired people in and around the Oshkosh area.
So when they started talking about LIR, it was interesting to me. It was something that I could be involved in, perhaps. I'd already become quite involved in conflict resolution and things like that, but this was an additional thing. And the point of this is to know about LIR. And I received an invitation to a general meeting questioning whether people were interested in starting LIR. I was interested in starting it because I had friends who were involved in LIRs in Washington, D.C. and in Milwaukee. And they had been urging us to start one in Gary. And the Indiana University wasn't interested. So I was delighted that UWO was trying to do this.
I can't say enough about how helpful the Elder Hostel organization was in those early months and even years of getting this organization started. We had the support of everyone, the administration here at the university. At that time, Pat Cole was the Assistant Vice Chancellor for Grad Studies and Continuing Ed, and she was really a champion for this program early on. And Vicki Lord Larson, who was the Vice Chancellor at that time, and John Kerrigan, who was the Chancellor, Billy Gauthier, who was the Director of Continuing Ed, all of those people were involved in looking at what will this mean for the university? How can we set it up in such a way that it will be sustainable?
They were supportive and they were really helpful. And we're very grateful for the university's help in this. And, you know, Marcia Rossiter, Patricia Cole, both were absolutely necessary to guide us along and to keep us going. And with that kind of help, why you couldn't fail. I mean, it was just, a wonderful experience for everybody.
The way that we found our initial committee was really basically word of mouth. We started talking to people that we knew. And, you know, one person leads to another 5 people, and then each of those people. So it was really word of mouth, but it wasn't accidental. It was very purposeful word of mouth to begin with. I do believe that even earlier than that initial meeting, one person in this community was so helpful in getting the word out, and that was Polly Zimmerman. Polly at that time wrote a weekly column in the Northwestern. And we contacted Polly because she was also a retired person and let her know about the program. And happily, she thought it was a wonderful, you know, idea. And so she put some things in her column to help us get the word out and to help let people know what was coming along. At that initial meeting where we had lots of people come and learn about this, and they had an opportunity right then and there to sign up for one of those committees. I think that was a stroke of genius on the part of the elder hostel people who were sort of guiding us in this, because right there, people began to get involved and really realize that this is going to be an organization that they can have a voice in and really be a part of. So we had that basic committee structure. We also developed a set of bylaws early on, and again, we were guided by other institutions, but then every institution really is unique, and every organization really is unique. So while we were guided by that, it took a fair amount of hammering out just exactly how did we want these bylaws to be. The basic model was that the learning and retirement programs, or institutes as Elder Hostel called them, were member-driven. And this was the unique feature about these programs. In most programs, somebody at the university or someone somewhere decides what the curriculum will be. In these programs, it was very self-directed learning. It was very much based on the idea that people know what they want and need to learn. And so they can make the decisions about what courses shall we put together, what trips shall we plan, what do we want to learn? We will be in charge of our own curriculum. And that was really the unique feature of this program.
I was the second curriculum chair after John Prochnow. It was in the early beginnings. Now I'm so proud of the curriculum that we have. Presently it's so organized, but in the early beginnings we were very novice in developing a curriculum. But I was a curriculum chair for 3 semesters, and it was a very intense but very interesting assignment, and I continued to be on the curriculum committee till last year.
I think I started off as a committee member. Bernice, my secretary, she had been on the committee. I think she was on the membership committee, and I think she got me involved with that. And if I recollect right, our membership at that time was just slightly over 100 or slightly under 100, and we set a goal for ourselves to try to get the membership up to 135. And I think Fred Bourne was part of the curriculum committee, and it was fun working with him. And then I became president of the organization, and I truly don't remember the exact year, but I think it was in 2001 or 2002, after my wife and I had returned from a bicycle trip around the world, and she was still working. She was a teacher up in Appleton, and I was retired, and so came down, and I spent a lot of time here.
And I can tell you that working with this group of people was an absolute delight. they, I don't know if by virtue of their maturity or by virtue of the fact that they're retired and they don't have the same kind of investment that people sometimes do in jobs and so on, they were so free to say what was on their mind and to really engage in spirited conversations about how do we want to do this or how do we want to do that. And at the same time, so good-natured. It was really, really fun to work with them. And, you know, that's how it was from the very beginning. It was just, that was the climate, that was the atmosphere of this organization from early on. But certainly I would want to mention one person, George Tipler, who was so involved in writing the bylaws. Not everyone can write bylaws. Not everyone wants to write bylaws, but he was very, very helpful in that regard.
When we had our first LAR convention here in Fond du Lac, or in Oshkosh, the enthusiasm from all the heads of all the organizations was contagious. We were looked highly appreciative of what we have here because Madison and Milwaukee and Green Bay were limited in their places of holding classes. We were not, and we were really at the epitome of all the LARs in the state. Yet here we were able to share and hopefully improve everyone that participated.
I think another challenge really early on was, for me, was, and others here at the university, was communicating this self-directed aspect of it, because this was something that most of us in our formal education, we've never done something like this. We think that the professor is going to tell us what we should learn, or the school system will tell us, or whatever. But this was, no, it's wide open. And so that took a little bit of exploring. What does this really look like, and how do we do this? And no, we don't want to fall back into the habit of just saying somebody else tell us what to do, or somebody else do the program. I will say, though, that once the curriculum committee and the group kind of got the hang of it, wow, off they went.
We had in the room a bunch of retired university people who were raring to continue. One of them was Gloria Link, and I think his name is Bob Berner, but his last name was Berner. He was English, and Lou Tuscan was German, and we picked up eventually Ann Hintz, who did French, and they all said, sure, we'll do it. We want to do it. And they gave wonderful, exciting courses for a number of years. And they kind of established kind of what I think was the tenor of, and continuing even today.
Just wonderful people that were so interested in giving lectures, and they were so agreeable because they didn't have a discipline problem, they didn't have to take attendance, nor did they have to worry about absentee. They didn't have to worry as a typical professor would. And he said they also said it's the eyes of the participants that gave them the real desire to give the lectures.
Before the committees even met, the university asked a couple of people to give teaser courses, and one of them was something that became Currently Speaking. And it was put on by my very dear friend who I'd known since high school, Jean Nelson, and her husband, Phil. And this was something that they did around town. If you needed to have a program and you were stuck, Gene and Phil would come and do one of their shows. They were really shows. They were kind of a husband and wife team. And so they were well known, but they, I think, helped establish the quality of what is LIR today.
I came to one meeting, and they were doing a series. One of the retired professors from the university was doing a series on Lincoln and part of the Civil War, and I was absolutely fascinated. It took me back to my college days and Dr. Hockman and world history, and here I was at this later age, all of a sudden getting that fire going again of a chance to learn something new and different that I hadn't been exposed to, and it was just great. And then I learned that the teachers came from members of the organization, which made it even more fascinating because they had such a diverse backgrounds, and so you learned about all different phases of life that I hadn't been exposed to. All I had worried about for 33 years was making Kleenex and Huggies and things like that. And all of a sudden you learned about the fact that there was a company here in town that refurbished airplanes. Got exposed more to the EAA. The theater, we'd go up to plays here on campus, and it was I think there was a Norwegian playwright that put on a play, and we went, and later in life, my wife and I, we traveled to Norway, and the author is very famous in Norway, and I was able to relate that back to my exposure here at Learning in Retirement. So it was exciting. And it was a great time. I think the year that I was the president, I think I came pretty close to attending every course that was offered, except for those days that they had two running at the same time, and I couldn't get to both of them. So that was really a fun time because it really expanded your understanding of the organization and appreciation of the people that took the time to teach the courses. They were fabulous. They were just fabulous, and the depth in which they did it was great, just great.
We wanted members from everywhere, although many classes were here in Oshkosh, we were in Neenah or Appleton or Menasha and also Fond du Lac. In Appleton there was the tech school that taught people, youngsters in the 18, 19 year age bracket, how to become chefs and cooks, and how to go to a real restaurant and serve properly. So we were invited then to be the guests of those students, which was wonderful.
They were all good. Each program had its own stamp. Some maybe because of my own personal interests were I like better than others. But I think the quality that we had was pretty outstanding, and up to this day, I think if you visit our class, you're not going to get a PhD going to the classes, but for people who don't know anything about whatever the subject may be, you come away with some intermediate or at least beginning knowledge of the subject. And what you do with it, other than maybe it brightens your day, you've learned something. You walked away a little smarter than you did when you walked in. And whether you use it or liked it or you didn't like it, you tried it. And this is one of the things I think you've always got to keep doing, is trying new stuff. Look out there. I mean, the world is full of things that you just don't know about. And some of the people that you get to meet know things that you don't know. And just the conversation as the years go on, you've learned a lot.
So you're getting people telling about the way they spent their lives and broadening your whole horizon. And there's some reluctance on people's part to share that part of their lives with him. Obviously, the retired teachers and the retired instructors from the university, they love it, that's what they did. But for somebody that didn't do that as part of their life, it's a little out of their comfort zone to have to get up and teach a class. And so they're growing in that regard also. And I think that that's very, very positive. It gives them something to think about and be active. I was in a writing class that we were here. It was so much fun. It was fantastic. We had one guy who came and he would write each week about a character that he met during the week. And some of the characters were from a restaurant encounter or from a bar encounter, but he would tell about their lives in the way that he wrote the story, and it was fascinating. We had another woman that came and told her story about how she had been a nurse out of Madison, and she had a boyfriend who had to go to Korea and serve in Korea. They were engaged during the time, but during that time she met another guy that would take her dancing in Madison, and it was a very platonic relationship. She was committed to her fiance in Korea, but it gave her a social outlet. Her boyfriend came back from Korea, they got married. He passed away. She's single, and she always kind of wondered what happened to the other guy. And as they were leaving class one day, one of the members of the class said, "Well, you should look him up." And so they came over here to campus and they got on the computer and they looked him up, and sure enough, he still lived in Madison, and he had recently lost his wife, and they ended up having a date together. And of course, our class followed this, and it was just a fascinating story. And she was able to write about it, and it just captured all of our thoughts. They had a couple of dates and then went their separate ways, but it was just the intriguing life course that we all go through to some extent, and just to see her enjoying and the excitement that went along with it, that was fun. So there are all kinds of wonderful interactions. So not only was it learning, but it was a chance to socialize and interact with other members of the class, and so it was just a lot of fun.
Probably the one event that we did have that was really what I thought the super event of when I was there is it was the 2nd January, which I believe would probably be 99, but we gave a dinner dance party at the hotel here, and I have never seen so many people dying to come. I mean, it was a coat and tie dress up dinner, and I tell you, I don't know what the percentage of our members attended, but it was almost perfect. And they were literally dying to get to that party and come in and celebrate a year of very, very fun stuff.
Well, I just happen to be an enthusiast, in case you can't tell. I like to learn. I thought when I retired that I would find a piece of research, original research that I was going to do, and then I could never come up with a question. Then I thought maybe I would take a course at a university or audit one, and I never got myself together to do that, and found it much more interesting to take up an interest like native gardening, or which I did quite a bit of work in. And so LIR suits me fine, because people come up with things that I don't understand or don't know about.
One neat thing after we got started, there is a Apollo, a Greek restaurant in Appleton that we went to and talked the owner into closing at lunchtime. So LIR members could go in and he'd tell about the Greek foods in his land, and we kept our fingers crossed that surely not more than 34 people came, because that's all the seats there were. but different things that he had started. So we were privileged to sit in the music hall in the basement where the Oshkosh Symphony Orchestra practices. So those of us who had not been so familiar with different instruments were able to see how well everything blended together and how much work it was involved in order to have such a good music concert.
One was Stan DeBoer from Fond du Lac, and he was a DNR guy and very enthusiastic about nature and got things going for nature trips. We all eventually went out and watched the salmon spawn at 4 o'clock in the morning under his direction. And so it just sort of grew, and it worked beautifully. It really did, and it was fun. It is fun. It's still fun.
Another part that we got started was taking buses to the opera. And when a certain opera was going to be shown, some of us were privileged to go to Appleton at Lawrence University, and she spoke to us maybe an hour and a half, all about what we were going to see and what we should be thinking about. And if you didn't know the opera, it was beautifully done in that the writing was all below, that you could follow the storyline so well.
The fact that you're someone who was not a professor has taken up the gauntlet and done, some people have done remarkable research and shared it with us and figured out ways to make something more interesting. I was thinking of a course that, what's his name? Bill Mattis, I guess it is, gave on Frank Lloyd Wright, and he put together a package to the Johnson place to see the architecture and so forth. I think it was his hometown, but you know, and that's cool. And people can share their things, yeah.
Last PowerPoint program that I developed was the art of tonsorial craft. And I had no idea what tonsorial craft was. And it is the study of barbering. And I went in and did a great deal of research, and it goes all the way back to 500 BC in Roman times, when a senator was judged by the best beard that he wore, not his intellect. And so the senators in Rome had their own barbers. And then on into the 300 AD in France, or in England, barbers were in a guild, and they were also bloodletting, which fascinated me because this is the first surgical procedure known to man was bloodletting. So the barbers were given the right to do surgery, do dentistry, and then there was a great deal of feelings that the medical guild in England felt that barbers were treading on thin ice, so they barred them from doing the surgery. So in modern times, 1855, I learned that there was a young boy was born in Fond du Lac. After 6 years, his family moved to Chicago, and their home was involved with the Chicago fire, and so the family moved when he was a teenager to New York. This man became a multimillionaire, and turned out to be, his name was King Camp Gillette, the founder, the Gillette Safety Razor Company, was born in Fond du Lac. So that is a highlight of that PowerPoint.
It was 9/11 in 2001. We had an LIR event that day. We met here. We were going to Spring Green in Wisconsin, outside of Madison, Wisconsin, for a play. And we were on the bus going down, and the bus driver had his radio on, and he reported to us that the plane had gone into the Twin Towers. Now, we had no visual appreciation of that at all. We just heard the radio report. And it caused us to start to talk about things. We talked about Kennedy's assassination and where we were when that happened. We talked about the start of the Korean War and what happened there. And so here's a bunch of elderly people reliving their impacts. Some of them had been in the service and talked about that. We got down to Spring Green. We had our box lunch. We went to the performance. We didn't change anything that we had planned for the day. We got back on the bus and we rode back. And now there were more reports, and the devastation was being reported more, and there was a quietness on the bus, and still some sharing of stories, but the whole tone had changed. It was very somber. Still not a total appreciation of what had happened. I remember getting off the bus, getting in the car, going home, and I got there and I turned on the television set and I sat there in our living room and was watching the show, and I saw the planes going into the tower, and I sat there, and here I had spent the whole day talking about it, reliving various things, and I sat there and I cried like a baby because you saw what was going on. But to think that I shared that day with some people that were of my generation was very meaningful to me, very meaningful to me. So that's one story that because now I'll never forget where I was on 9/11. It was with LIR.
And people who are actually now still with the organization. Gosh, Burns Apfeld, you know, a wonderful strength and inspiration and practical go-getter that got us off to a good start. They were all just really engaged in it, and for me it was a lot of fun, and I think it was for most of them. I remember Annie Mengel was one of our early members. She was a member before we had members, as so was Bernice Schaubs, and the two of them were friends, and many of the people were friends, but you know, we would get together and have coffee, and they would just come up with ideas and enthusiasm and suggestions. So those are a few of the people that come to my mind, but honestly, every single person who was involved was enthusiastic and fun to work with. John Prochnow, I think he was involved very early on, and he was a delight. I learned a lot from John Prochnow.
The people that I worked with were as exciting as the courses that we have presented, and I believe, I don't know the exact number anymore, but at one time we had already done over 500 different courses. My guess today it might be over 1,000. All because of people who volunteered, who went out and searched for people who knew a little more about the subject than you or I do, and they all turned out to be pretty interesting subjects. So that's how it all started.
I guess I'll always be interested in whatever learning and retirement will offer, in that perhaps you are thinking about a certain thing one way, but after you listen to the lecture or the suggestions, that perhaps you could see a certain situation another way. So I'm a born learner.
Brought back the spirit of learning. It gave me the opportunity to see other facets of life that other people did, to make our community the community that it is. I mean, it's just not a manufacturing facility that you were totally focused on for so many years, that now all of a sudden there are these other activities going on. I think I told you coming over that I went out to lunch with my son shortly after I retired, and I was utterly amazed at the number of people that were out at lunch in a restaurant having lunch, because for 33 years I had eaten in the mill cafeteria or the office cafeteria and hadn't ever left the facilities for 33 years. And now all of a sudden, my gosh, there's other things going on, other people doing all these other things. It was really kind of fun and enlightenment on my part that there was this other activities going on. So that's what it, and it was a real learning in retirement for me. I was learning again.
It gave me an appreciation of how people can get together. I mean, really diverse people who saw something, and that is just learning. All kinds of various backgrounds and so forth, who came together, who really worked. I mean, I've met some super duper people. Everybody had one thing in common: let's make it work.
To me, LIR has re-injuvenated me. At 82 years old, I still am looking forward to attending more.
It's an organization of people who are interesting, good people, and I've made some friends through working with LIR. And you know, I would say also that I feel grateful, I feel thankful that I had a chance to have a hand in getting an organization like this up and running. When I see the articles in the paper about all the things LIR is doing, or sometimes when someone mentions to me about LIR, that feels good. So I feel thankful for that.
I think when people first retire, they have certain things that they want to be sure to do. But after a while, they need to seek out new ideas, new things to fill their day, because we've learned that you have to keep learning all your life.
By and large, that was it. And then the organization that we formed, and boom, 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 and here we are today, almost 20 years. And it's hard to believe, but with the cooperation of a lot of fine people, and that was an adventure unto itself, it turned out to be a pretty nice organization.